Today's webinar or online conference of Islam and Liberty Network, we will be talking about the economic challenges faced by particularly three countries after the Arab Spring, namely Tunisia, Morocco, and Algeria. As we all know that these countries and other countries in the region have gone through different stages of political and democratic transition. Each has a unique case perhaps, and so it's not easy to compare. But I think what is perhaps common across the region is the economic challenges being faced by the population of these countries, whether it is issues of job, economic growth, or investment or trade. Now, well, I think we can start talking about Algeria. Our friend Riadh, who was just speaking, I would like to request him to share his thoughts on the subject, economy after Arab Spring. Over to you, Riadh.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank Islam and Liberty Network for the opportunity to participate in this event, along with other speakers like Mr. Harmouzi and Mr. Ayman and Mr. Salman, to exchange idea and widen our view from different experience, especially for this three neighbor and very close population actually between Morocco, Algeria and Tunisia. We feel that we are one country in three different states. So our problems are almost the same, if I understand better the situation in both Morocco and Tunisia. So my talk will be about Algeria. Starting from the Arab Spring, maybe Algeria didn't join the first wave in the same intensity like Tunisia or Morocco, although the regime had tried to make some changes. But the Algerian popular movement came a few years later when the previous president, a sick man, an old man, and unfit to become a president and to continue as a president, want to be re-elected. So Algerians come to the street by millions in 2019. And from that day, it was also the same, like I think the same like Morocco. It started in 22nd Friday, 22nd February. So we enter a new era of what it become called in the media Hirak movement. So people every weekend they will come to the street by millions. So maybe I will try to share some presentation here from application. Okay, here. I hope is clear my presentation. Mr. Salman?
Yes, it is clear. Yes, it is clear.
Okay. So, okay, I will use this one. So, you know that the modern politics is actually a continuity of people are seeking better situation. They evaluate, of course, the development and the economic policy. This is politics. Politics is 100% related to the economic situation of any country. Whenever the economic situation is not good, people they start question the policies. They start question the ability and the quality of people in the regime. So if from Tunisian, the merchant who toppled a dictator because of this, the Bouazizi torch, and from that point we started what we call the Arab Spring. But Algeria actually avoided the first wave of the Arab Spring, of the first popular movement, which happened in Tunisia, in Morocco, in Libya after that, and in other countries. So on that time, the rise of oil price brings almost Algeria to very high reserve of hard currency, up to 180 billion, and maybe more also, around 220 billion in that time. So regime was able to create a little bit of bias on social peace and inhibit any social and economic demands to transfer to become political demands. So the regime in that time, in that period of time, when he saw that things are very hot in Tunisia, in Morocco, in Egypt, in other countries, he started a little bit of superficial political reform. But it was a deterioration of political representation. So people, they don't trust anymore the political party and the representation. So Algeria, it was a little bit pacified in that period of time. But few years later, millions of Algerian people come to the street. And because, as I say, a sick and old president want to be re-elected in an unconstitutional situation, and the economic was very bad, was not that good, unfortunately, high unemployment, decrease of living standard, concentration of wealth in the hand of bureaucrats and handy, what we call clients to the regime, businessmen who are like parasite, and all their activity is part of the government activity. So people come to the street by millions. And what characterized Hirak, it was a general pacific revolt, not sectarian, not partisan, not of the union. Everybody was outside and looking for change. Of course, the role of the social media like Facebook and YouTube has played a great role to bring people together and to create a uniform message. So the civilian action was on a weekly basis, millions of protests and demonstration asking for change and refusing the status quo of the situation. There is no leadership, there is no representation, but everybody was outside. So here, like what happened in Tunisia, and maybe something almost similar happened also in Morocco. In Tunisia, of course, in Morocco, the king has played a role to make some changes. So in Tunisia and same like in Algeria, the army has played a role because the new international climate is against any form of oppression or brutality. And the information was instant thanks to Facebook, thanks to all these social media platforms. And the most important things, like same like what happened in Tunisia, the division between the two factions of the regime, which is the army and the civilian, there is no compromise. So the army as a backbone of the regime has distanced itself from the civilian, and later on created to make a change and topple this corrupt civilian. Of course, if we are talking about the economic dimension of this movement, we can understand, because Algeria is mainly a petroleum country. So since 2014, it was a high drop of oil price, and the country became in a hard situation, and even a decline in the level of standard of living and GDP per capita. So from 4,500 a few years later, it became around 3,000 and less later on also. So this situation, of course, create demand for a change. If we talk about the deficit also, from that point of time, Algeria is almost recording every year a deficit, both in trade and in government accounts and government budget. The cash reserve also has declined from 2013, now is around 50 billion. And is coming to the decline. So some experts, they will say that within 2 years or maybe within 3 years maximum, if things has improved in terms of oil. So all the situation push the regime under the obligation to make some changes. As I say, Algeria is excessively dependent on energy sector. I mean, all other sectors are not able to contribute to the GDP in a great way. The informal sector, unfortunately, is very big. Some experts are putting it in the ratio of 73%. And we have almost 12 million workers. Almost 5 million of them, they are in the informal sector. So the
sorry, Riadh, for interruption.
Yes. Yes.
Just wanted, like you have about 5 minutes to conclude your presentation.
Okay. I mean, if we look for all this indication and the indexes, we can say from the perspective of corruption, we are 106, competitiveness, we are 89, doing business, we are 157. So things are really, there is a dichotomy actually in the economy, in the economic model, compared between, I mean, in the discourse, official discourse, we are talking about the free market and pro-business economy, but in practicality, we are still Soviet and very statehood and interventionist bureaucracy during the implementation. So the economic model copied from the Soviet era is besieged, and we are not able to create wealth. So the Algeria economic system is heavy bureaucracy, 5 million in the informal sector, large state intervention, mainly is based on energy. So if we talk about the revival, I mean, there is maybe a few points that I will cite very fast here. So definitely we have to stop state involvement in economy. We have even a term for that. Everybody in Algeria is talking about الاقتصاد الإداري, economy run by administration. So this one, we have to make a huge change in the mentality of the regime, and a lot of education has to go along with that. We are advocating also less bureaucracy, and we have almost also around 4 million working within the public sector, which is too much. And of course, we need also less regulation. So at least to make it fast for company creation. We have like Mr. Harmouzi said, the worker law is very heavy and is copied from the French model. The juridic system also is not playing his role in a good way. The land law also is making trouble also to the business. And of course, the same way, we have also two hiccups, which is the fiscal system and the financial system. The financial system, by all evaluation from the local expert, is still even behind the standard that is happening in Morocco or in Tunisia. And some of our export is going through Tunisia because some of our businessmen, they feel that doing it through Tunisia, it's more flexible and much better. So this is generally the situation. And now, because Algeria has done the Hirak Act 1 in 2019, and it was a halt for this Hirak because of the COVID, but people are back in the street. Now this is the second week. The last Friday, it was the second Friday. And people again, they are back in the street, and the regime is on the left and right looking for change, because as I say before, there is no room for brutality, there is no room for repression. They have to advocate some changes. And there is the agenda is, of course, political reform plus some economic reform. And thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Riadh. That was very helpful to understand the Algerian perspective here. You have highlighted many issues which are common in the region, heavy government, statist system where the government plays a heavy and dominating role. Also, you identified the parasite businesses, a huge informal sector, and a very huge public sector employment, and adding to the budget deficit. So definitely issues of. Shall I move to the next question here? And this is concerning the private sector. So maybe I can request Riadh to comment on it. The question is in the Q&A box here. And has asked by Hasinullah Khan from Pakistan. And he's asking this question, is the indigenous private sector in position to cope with all the internal and external economic challenges, especially in the perspective of COVID-19 challenges? How would you like to answer that, Riadh?
Thank you for the question. Actually, I remember one joke from President Reagan I saw in the YouTube. So he say, when the government shut down, nobody will feel that government is absent. So the COVID situation, actually, I think it gives in many countries, and one of them is Algeria, that when the government was absent and all his bureaucrats are in confinement, a lot of activity, even the president, in one of his media intervention, has highlighted that, saying that it was a lot of activity because there is no the regulation was at its lowest level. The control from the government was at its lowest level. So they cannot bother the people, they are already confined, they cannot bother them too much. So we have seen a lot of, how to say, example of private activity, including making masks, making a corridor of hygiene, and so on, this kind of activity. And I think people has understand that one of the major role of the state and government has just to create positive roles for business than be involved in business. Unfortunately, Algeria, still our main income from hard currency is from the energy sector. And we are talking about, our numbers are hovering for the last few years between 97% to 98%. And even the 2% remaining, still, from the 2% remaining, which is not directly from oil and gas sector, part of that 2% remaining is coming also from byproduct from oil and gas. So the contribution of now the government has set a target. He wants just to move to $5 billion outside the energy sector, outside the oil and gas sector. So the contribution of the private sector in the model of Algeria is still very, very limited. And of course, as I say, there is a dichotomy. The discourse is a liberal discourse. He wants the people to be to take care of their future, of their wealth. They want people to contribute in the creation, but there is a lot of hiccups in terms of implementation of this beautiful discourse. Thank you.
Thank you, Riadh.